I'm Martson. I'm the co-author of a new book on transformative resilience called 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗢𝗡. I have worked with international leaders like Mary Robinson, the United Nations, 𝗬𝗎𝗎 100, Fortune 500 companies, and a number of NGOs overseas. So my background is quite diverse. I've written for or been featured in outlets like the New York Times, Harvard Business Review, and in innovation forums, which may be interesting to your audience, such as South by Southwest and UC Berkeley's 𝗤𝗕𝗓𝗔𝗟 Center for Technology and Entrepreneurship. In the process of having a number of shakeups in my professional life, my family life, and in my own life, my own health, it brought me to do research on what differentiates those of us who are kind of knocked down by challenging circumstances and those of us who are able to use it as a launch pad or springboard for the next iterations of ourselves. And when I say ourselves, it could be us as individuals, us as leaders, organizations, or even nations. So the two ideas that we've introduced in the book are 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗢𝗡, and those are the resilient individuals, leaders, again, whole organizations or even communities and nations that turn challenges into opportunities, innovation, and growth. And so in essence, when we talk about transformative resilience, we're trying to get past this notion of bouncing back, which you hear about so often. And I think there's some comfort that people have in this idea that they can get back to the past and the way that things were, instead of going forward into the unknown and having to do the sometimes hard work of kind of creating the next iteration. But again, transformative resilience really is about forward motion and about using our challenges, our stresses, our losses as this catapult to go forward. In essence, we're playing off of the notion of type A's and B's as opposed to speaking to them directly, because those are personality types, but what we're talking about with 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗢𝗡, it goes beyond a personality type. Again, because we're talking about individuals, leaders, or even whole organizations and communities. So some of it is wordplay, really, and we are going beyond this notion of you kind of have it or you don't, you're born a type A or a type B or a type R in this case. So I don't want to focus too heavily on type A's and B's because I think it takes us away from the main principle of type R's, which again is about this forward motion and about something that you can become. You may already have some of the foundations for it. And again, it's not just about individual people. You can have whole groups of people and whole organizations that exhibit some of these characteristics and behaviors and growth and innovation. We all have the ability to learn and grow no matter where we are in our development. And again, that can be us as individuals or us as a family, us as peers, colleagues, what have you, because we heavily influence one another and we bring our own basic skills and mindsets into groups, into innovations, into policies, and larger interactions. But again, we probably already have some of these abilities. So in some ways, we all are a bit type R and have the foundations to then stretch ourselves to learn more, to begin to bring some of these mindsets and reframing skills into our day-to-day more regularly. As I started to mention earlier, it really was a number of shakeups in our lives that brought us to collaborate and kind of innovate together. It's not something that I expected would ever happen, but both my mom and I were working as female entrepreneurs in parallel to one another, and during some difficult years we were supporting one another. And so when the time came that we came to the other side of some of these challenges, we started to talk about how many other people, leaders, organizations around us were struggling with increasing pressures at the individual and personal level, the leadership and professional level, but also the international and global level. And we felt that together we have these unique perspectives. So my mom has a psychology and corporate consulting background. I have an international affairs and kind of leadership and organizational perspective. And so we felt that we could add something new, because the conversations previously were either very focused on the individual, or they were very focused on the macro level and how an economy bounces back after a financial crisis or what have you. Yet, again, us as people or leaders or what have you, we're experiencing challenges on all of these levels, and we're also having to find solutions on all of these levels. So it doesn't make sense to have these very fragmented bodies of literature when our experiences are more holistic, as is the need for us to come up with new kinds of ways of, living, working, leading, being a part of this global community. First of all, social innovators are people. They bring their own mindsets and skills and abilities and vision to what they do. And particularly if you're thinking outside the box, which most social innovators are, you aren't always warmly welcomed to begin. It takes a while for your ideas to gain support and traction. It can be very isolating. You can have to go through multiple iterations and therefore be quite persistent. You have to draw on things like a deeper sense of purpose. So many of the type R abilities, first of all, the type R mindset is really fundamental to innovators. You have to be able to see a discomfort or something wrong in the world or a difficult moment as an opportunity. And you have to be able to reframe that to then identify an opportunity for the next innovation and a way for it to be done differently. So I think many social innovators already have some of the foundations and could probably continue to practice with strengthening the type R mindset, reframing. But also, I would assume that many of them are already drawing upon some of the skills and, again, could strengthen them around things like finding a healthy relationship to control. So there are many things, as much as we think we have the answer, or we get excited about our solution, we don't always have control about how that is received or if it's the right time. There are so many ways in which this is important. And so on one hand, we have to have the fundamentals of being able to influence, but we don't ultimately have control. And as soon as we're able to work on a skill like that, we're able to learn from the mistakes, from the new developments around us. We're able to adapt. We're able to continue to learn and create feedback loops that then allow us to improve our innovations. We may not always have all of the skills in the same amounts at the same times, but it's important to at least have some of them and be working on strengthening them. And to be clear, there are days when we're going to be better at some of them than others. Some days I'm like, yes, I'm doing great. I'm a type R. And other days I'm like, oh man, don't tell them. I wrote the book, but I am not feeling it. So, we all have that. And again, that's also true for the greatest of leaders or for teams or groups of people that are having to come together in parliaments and make decisions together. And compromise and adapt and reframe and learn from each other or the changing circumstances. But yes, these are fundamental skills for innovators. Of course. I mean, it's like many things that we develop, and it's particularly interesting if we can do it in groups so we can learn from each other and support one another, which is the great thing about something like an academy where people are doing these kinds of development in parallel to one another. But we've developed, drawn on research across sectors that help people understand the fundamentals of what we're doing and why we've chosen these skills, why they matter, what difference they make. And then it's really a matter of practicing. And there are exercises that people can do, fun ways that people can engage. Because yes, this is about dealing with our challenges, but we have to also bring joy to it and fun, and vision and color to be able to learn and to want to engage. So I very much think it's teachable, and it's something that we're already doing in different arenas. This is the kind of thing that we're doing with people everywhere, and I think two things are of particular interest. Well, obviously you have these new concepts and the research that supports them, which is new for people, though it will echo things they may be familiar with, enough so that they can engage with it. But on one hand, we have the Type R mindset and skills that people, teams, organizations can embed in the way that they do things. So there's the skill set, but there's also the process of how we go through converting our challenges into opportunities. And some of those very nicely align with social innovation and the process. And I know that you guys referred to a 6-stage process.
Yes.
And I think that there's definitely some overlap that speaks to what you do. So on one hand, transformative resilience often starts out with being in our comfort zones. We've got a status quo, something that we're comfortable with. We don't often question it. It's just the way that things are done. We've come to accept it. And it may not be working very well. It may be quite dysfunctional, but we're not able to see it until there's a major disruption that's introduced. And in your case, you would talk about it as kind of a prompt in an innovation cycle. So you have this disruption. It often throws people or teams into chaos. And there's a period of confusion, whether that's social confusion, team confusion, individual confusion. And in that case, there might be kind of a time when we're in denial about things. We don't know what the next step is, but it's kind of before an idea has formed. And then we get beyond chaos to the point where we have kind of a catalyst, an aha moment. And sometimes it takes a while for that to come, but that really is kind of the proposal stage for you guys. And you can give yourself all sorts of inputs. You can do things like give yourself space, be mindful, do mindfulness exercises, that give you the time and space to then have the aha moment. But ultimately, at some point, there's some new idea that crystallizes and lets you see things in a different way. And from there, we see the integration stage, which is really about experimenting, prototyping, adjusting, seeing what works and what doesn't work. So after you've tested it out and you've kind of innovated and you've learned the lessons and you've found a new way of being, or you've found a new solution to how to do things in a particular system, then you can scale up. But you don't usually do that until you've tested things for a while and found your feet and seen that it works. And in a way, it kind of goes back. I know that for you guys, it comes to systemic change. And that's very much what Type Rs do as individuals. They start with themselves, they create change, new mindsets, new skills, and they take that into their leaderships, their organizations, their families, or even how they engage with the larger world. And so coming back to this cycle of renewal, when you're scaling up to the systemic level, you're almost going back to stage 1 again, where you're in a comfort zone and you've created a new normal. And that becomes almost the status quo until it doesn't work any longer and there's a next disruption. You know, it's not like you go through this process of transformative resilience and then it's fixed and you're like, okay, great, we can finish. History doesn't work that way. You know, life doesn't work that way. You know, more than ever in today's world, we need people that are thinking about how to take these challenges we face, and some of them may be very specific crises or shakeups, and some of them may be more subtle, but I would say that collectively we're facing a lot of growing pains and a lot of difficult decisions in the world, and I would really just love to encourage people to keep pushing forward, keep innovating, finding other people that can support you, and that you may have setbacks in your process of innovating, but stick with it. We all really need the outcomes of this new thinking. And if you're curious as to where you are in your process, your Type R skills, we have a free little assessment tool on our website, and you can find out more about our book, and that is www.type-r-resilience.com.